Wow, folks, what an amazing week with the blackouts on Wednesday. SOPA and PIPA are on the ropes, but don't get complacent yet. We'll talk about them. We'll talk about Megaupload and Anonymous. And we'll spend the balance of the show looking at a lawsuit between Noah Kravitz, who joins us today, and Phone Dog over the value of his Twitter account. Next on This Week in Law.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiL.
Bandwidth for This Week in Law is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiL, This Week in Law with Denise Howell, episode 145, recorded January 20, 2012. Separation of Church and Twitter. This episode of This Week in Law is brought to you by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies on your PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or TV instantly. All streamed directly to you, saving you time, money, and hassle. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit. Hi there, folks. It's Denise Howell here. What a week this has been with SOPA and PIPA and the blackouts on Wednesday. We've got a great panel here on This Week in Law for you today. We're going to talk about all that stuff. And also, we're going to talk about a lawsuit that we've been following. We actually have the one of the litigants in that lawsuit with us, Noah Kravitz, who is involved in a dispute over the Twitter account that he was maintaining when he was formerly employed or working with, let's say it that way. Phone Dog. Hi, Noah. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Very nice to have you finally. We've been talking about having you on the show for a couple of weeks since the New York Times wrote up your story, so I'm very excited to be able to go deeper on that today.
Those silly holidays and that big CES thing got in the way, but we did it. I'm really glad to be here.
Yes, exactly. And last week, we were we were gazing at CES from afar here on TWiL, not able to attend, but we're of course always interested in things that are released or talked about there that have legal implications. So if you have anything that, caught your eye while you were there covering the show, we'd love to hear the spin on that too. But first, let's introduce the rest of the panel. Joining us from Rattan and Tucker here in my neck of the woods, Orange County, California, is Maria Stearns, who's a labor and employment lawyer there. Hello, Maria.
Hello.
Great to have you join us on the show. We've had your colleague Edson join us in the past, and we're hoping that he can come along, and he's busy at court right now, but he's going to try and rush back and join us as well, so we'll have the double whammy of employment folks. But we're thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
Also,
I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. And also back again for an illustrious return to This Week in Law. It's Evan Brown. Hello, Evan.
Hey, Denise. How's it going? It's great to be here. And I tell you what, I don't remember very many weeks like the one we've just had where there's so much to talk about, and it's like news is developing even as we're going on the air. So this is pretty awesome. I'm really happy to be here to talk with you and to talk with Maria and Noah. It's going to be a good time.
Yes, absolutely. All right, well, let's get to some of that news that's developing right as we're going on the air here, and let's take it a bit chronologically. First up this morning, we heard from Harry Reid. Harry Reid is the senator from Nevada who last week, you'll recall, on This Week in Law, we were, CES was still in progress, and we discussed how the organizers of CES asked everyone at the show to contact Harry Reid, call them from the Las Vegas Convention Center, and voice their opinion on a particular vote that Senator Reid was attempting to bring in the in the Senate next week. That vote would have lifted the hold on PIPA, the Protect IP Act. That hold was put in place by Senator Wyden. You're following all of the back and forth on this here. So Harry Reid did hear a lot about people who did not want the vote to happen imminently on PIPA. And then in the interim, we had, you'll recall last week too, we mentioned how Reddit was going to go dark on Wednesday. That was 9 days ago that Reddit announced its plan to make last Wednesday, the 18th, the protest SOPA and PIPA day by taking various websites dark. Well, it announced it was going to go dark, and who knew if the folks at Reddit had any idea what a snowball they began pushing down the hill, because as we know, Wednesday turned out to be an enormously important day, as Wikipedia and Huffington Post and Google and Wired and hundreds of sites took themselves down, very influential sites. Boing Boing. Here at TWiT, we had live coverage all day in black and white with a lot of attention drawn and all the topics on SOPA and PIPA. So quite a lot has gone on there. And what Harry Reid has announced this morning is that indeed he's going to delay that vote. He's not going to push for PIPA to come to a full Senate vote at all. So it is essentially dead until, let's see what he says. In light of recent events, I have decided to postpone Tuesday's vote on Protect IP. He says, we have made this is at the end of his statement, we have made good progress through the discussions we've held in recent days, and I am optimistic that we can reach a compromise in coming weeks. So PIPA is off the table only temporarily until some sort of compromise revision to that bill can take place, or perhaps open the Darrell Issa, Ron Wyden bill will come into play here and be the replacement for both PIPA and SOPA. Because hard on the heels of Senator Reid's statement this morning, we have the primary backer of SOPA, that is, its main sponsor is Lamar Smith. And he has now said, hard on the heels of Harry Reid's announcement, that he would delay a cloture vote on, I'm sorry, that's right, that's what Senator Reid had said. But now Lamar Smith is going to postpone further action on SOPA until there has been more discussion and revision and thought on it too. So neither bill has been officially withdrawn, but they have been indefinitely postponed. Evan, is it time for the internet side of this equation to declare victory, or is this just a way for everyone to take a deep breath?
All I know is that I'm angry at Congressman Smith because, this bill has been around since October 26th, and it's all the way now January 20th, and I first actually blogged substantively on SOPA this morning, and then he goes and does this and makes my brilliant blog post irrelevant. So I'm mad, and I've got to protest something, that's for sure. So the saga is never over, really. I mean, who are we kidding? This is representative of a tension. Let's just step way, way back and look at this at a very general level and a long view of history here. This tension has always been with us and will never go away. That tension being, between intellectual property, ownership rights, and the strain that's put on those by the advancement of new technologies. It goes all the way back, We'll talk about Gutenberg and all the way through the early part of the 20th century with player pianos and how John Philip Sousa was so upset about record players and stuff like that, phonographs. So I mean, this will never go away. This dispute will never be over. This tension will never be without us. And so there are plenty of other avenues where this whole controversy is going to go. SOPA and PIPA were just the most recent incarnations of efforts to take a hold on this. What is most interesting to me about the phenomena that arose around SOPA and PIPA is the cultural reaction about it. And the thing that distressed me throughout the whole process, ever since October, when since we've been really talking about SOPA, is just how radical people are in their discussions about all this stuff. And it was not hard at all to find plenty of examples where people just simply did not understand what SOPA purported to say or what its intentions were or what it actually was going to entail and what the real effects would have been. So it was this perfect environment to have this really fomented dispute that I think, in large part, got really, really irrational, much to the detriment of all the parties involved. So it's by no means over. We're going to see plenty more of this stuff. It's just going to be the next chapter. We'll turn the page and see what's coming next in the saga. That's what I predict.
Well, here's what Daryl Issa says, as reported on Politico. He says, shelving the bills removes the imminent threat to the internet, but warned it's not over yet. Do you agree with that, Noah?
Yeah, I do. I'd be curious to hear, Evan, a little more about, I hate to say this, I'm opening a box of worms here, can of worms, what the irrationality in the debate was that you saw. And not because I didn't see it, but I'm just, from my perspective as a, blogger / journalist / I guess litigator, or litigant as I was introduced. Sorry, not litigator, please.
Right.
I certainly have my take on it, which I think went from extreme knee-jerk to a little more tempered over time, and trying to actually talk to more people and understand a little bit more about, the intent and the language and that kind of stuff. But I'm curious. I agree that it's not over. I mean, the web is iterative, our world is iterative, but certainly in something like this, it's certainly not. Lamar Smith's not going to go away, for better or for worse. But it's interesting. When I was at CES, you go to shows like this and you bump into all sorts of people. And I wound up standing on the monorail one morning into the show next to a DC lawyer who works for one of the big cable internet companies, who has a very high stake, very large stake in all this stuff. And talking to her about it, she was very, at least in talking to me, very rational and very sort of, explaining both sides of it. And, I would be curious to hear a little bit more about sort of the slant of, okay, the people who are opposed to SOPA might be a little bit irrational, not because I'm not opposed to it, but because I'm want to know a little bit more about the other point of view.
Yeah, I mean, there was irrationality on both sides of it. I think it's pretty easy for us to identify the irrationality of big content because you hear this sweeping hyperbole, vast generalizations. You even saw it in Senator Reid's statement about how piracy is responsible for the loss of billions of dollars of revenue a year. And it's just like, oh my God, the sky is falling. The devil himself is coming over to take over the earth in the form of piracy. That's an irrational response to all this. It's not measured. It's not principled. It's not based on empirical data, which, the empirical data is really not there because it's such a moving target. Nobody really knows. And the GAO even concedes as much. There was just as much irrationality on the side of the opponents. And to the extent that irrationality was in measure to the misunderstanding or the misguidedness of some of the arguments. And I think the best example, this may be really the only truly good example of irrationality. It came out from this motif that a single post by one of Facebook's almost a billion users that happened to link to infringing content on a foreign website would result in Facebook itself being wiped off the face of the web. That's just not supported by a reading of SOPA. It's silly to think about. It's silly to think that Congress would try to enact legislation like that. And that all came down to this interpretation of what it meant to define a website that was, that was meant, or that was, I forget what the statute actually used, was devoted to the theft of U.S. property or something like that. I don't think devoted was the right word. Does anybody know what it's in Section 103 of SOPA. And people would focus on that language that says that the enabling or the facilitation of infringement or distribution of circumvention technology in violation of Section 1201 of the DMCA or of distributing counterfeit goods, they would just read that last part and say, oh, well, is just putting a link on Facebook to infringing content, is that enabling or facilitating this bad stuff? And therefore, a private right of action would just if you go to a judge and he enters an injunction and it wipes off, it tears up the DNS, tears up the domain name, pulls it off the web, or whatever. That's just not supported by the reading. The site has to be, primarily geared toward that activity. It has to have no limited purpose other than that. It has to, or either be marketed for that, and nobody's going to think that Facebook, would meet those criteria. So taking that argument, it's
here's
just
the
so
language,
easy to,
Evan. Primarily designed or operated for the purpose of, has only limited purpose or use other than, or is marketed by its operator or another acting in concert with that operator for use in offering goods or services in a manner that engages in, enables, or facilitates copyright infringement, circumvention of copyright protection systems, or trademark infringement, or, and then it goes on. So
clear as day.
What a nice bunch of legalese that is.
Can't we hire a copy editor for those guys?
I'd love to.
That's fine. Just read my post, that I wrote about it today at internetcases.com. I do kind of parse it out there. Yeah, I mean, that's a word salad, but, so is a lot of legislation. And that doesn't mean that we just think, oh, well, this sucks. It's hard to read, therefore it's bad, and I'm going to, crusade against it. We got to read it carefully, read it in a principled way, and not get caught up in faulty premises that lead us into these conclusions that make us all irrational and do disservice to the whole debate. So that's just one example. Just kind of address your question, Noah. That's where I see that everybody probably could have done a better job of just taking a deep breath and slowing it down here, and actually looking at what it said.
I think the folks in my community, bloggers and NR followers and such, phrases like DNS blocking, just lit a fire under people, and that extrapolation happened. And I think, also some of the language coming from some of the the legislators and the folks debating, and talking about this on Capitol Hill, really made it seem like, okay, these men and women don't necessarily have the expertise to really, craft legislature about the current internet, but they also seem to not be interested in bringing in, experts who might be able to help. And that was very, very inflammatory as well. And whether that was, and again, we're getting all this through sound bites and through blog posts and through people trying to parse word salads and what have you. And so it's 9 degrees removed, but,
yeah,
right.
Couple of thoughts on this. On the side of, further to Evan's point of extremism around all this, Chris Dodd, former Connecticut senator and chairman and CEO of the MPAA, in response to the blackouts on Wednesday, was very vocal and condemnatory and called it an irresponsible gimmick, which, just smacks me as comical, because here we have an industry standing up and actually bringing in lots of attention and discussion to an issue that wouldn't have otherwise been there. When Wikipedia and Google highlight an issue for people, they pay attention. I have strangers stopping me, not strangers, but acquaintances stopping me who know I do the show and I pay attention to these issues, going, hey, is your show going to talk about the PIPA and SOPA stuff this week? And these are people who are not in the industry at all. So definitely the attention was brought to the topic. So to call it an irresponsible gimmick, I think, is a nice example of what you were discussing, Evan. And I'd love to see if the entertainment industry has, as much conviction behind its position here, that they put their money where their mouths are in a similar kind of way, and educate people in the way that the internet sites who went down and participated on Wednesday did. Any thoughts on that, Noah?
Well, other than just, did you direct that at me, Denise? I want to make sure I heard
go
right.
Ahead. No, jump in.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I didn't want to cut in front of it. As far as the entertainment industry doing what's right, I would just tack on to what I was saying earlier, that it's got, we're all smart people we're all not all smart people, but, there are smart people available to deal with these issues. And, it's just a matter of being principled and not getting caught up into that. And it's really that space, that kind of, rationality that should be left to address all of this.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Noah? Can you see the entertainment industry deciding to black itself out for a day to draw attention to an issue like this?
Having gotten knee deep in my first litigatory, is that a word? My first litigation experience.
It is now.
I don't know what the word rationality means anymore. So no, I would love to see the recording industry black itself out for a day, or whatever the appropriate response is, to take a stand against irrationality and take a stand towards level-headed discussion. And I don't mean that to point a finger at the recording industry per se, but just to say, we're in this time of upheaval in so many industries, and people trying to figure out, what do I do with social media? What do I do with digital copyright? What do I do with, textbooks, digital textbooks in schools, for that matter? Thinking about yesterday's Apple media event. And so, with the recording industry, at least, my sense as a consumer and as somebody who knows some people who work in the industry, whatever, like lots of people's sense of it is that they sort of got caught with their pants down, and the MP3 revolution, they just were sort of denying it, and then it was too late, and what do we do? And that, I think, is the mindset that has to change to get to, everybody coming to the table and making some rules, making some procedures that make sense. I mean, I don't, as somebody who gets paid to write, and as somebody who's an amateur musician who once had dreams of going on tour in a van, I don't want to see a recording artist or a writer or anybody else not get paid for their work if what they want to do is maintain the right to get paid for it. So I think piracy is a problem. But I also don't see, at this point, I haven't seen anything to indicate that whoever it is, the MPAA or the RIAA or Chris Dodd or whoever is, Lamar Smith, is interested in sitting down with the folks on the other side of the table and really having a level-headed discussion. And for that matter, who knows who on the other side of the table, like you said, Evan, smart people are available out there. It's a matter of, getting the right ones in the right leadership positions to, sit down with an open mind. And that can be really tough to do, as you well know.
Yep.
Okay, so we know that at least Wednesday's blackouts had an impact, that the two bills, SOPA and PIPA, are temporarily on hold. Who knows how or when they will rear their ugly heads again. Open is still out there as an alternative. And the other thing that we know is that with the laws on the books, as they are right now, the federal government has managed to shut down and arrest various executives at Megaupload.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. Noah, why don't you tell people who have not yet heard about this what happened?
The internet almost turned into a real-life version of the movie War Games last night, is what I read, I think, on CNET at about 12:30 in the morning last night. I don't know that I can, give the best chronological account of what happened, but the folks in charge of Megaupload were arrested. Their cars were impounded. Pictures are all over the blogs and everything. And then, I don't know if Anonymous came out and said it was in response. I think they did, but I might have that wrong.
They did.
This enormous denial of disservice attack was levied on, the Department of Justice website in the U.S. and some other, big-time websites that were taken down for a little while. And literally, there's a map, I think it was taken from, how do you pronounce, Akamai? I always pronounce their name wrong.
Akamai.
Akamai, thank you. From, one of their traffic monitoring things, and it was sort of this global map with all of these hotspots all over it that, people got hyperbolic and wrote headlines about, cyber nuclear war, but it was it was pretty wild to see. And whether or not, what Megaupload was doing to make money was legal or not legal, black hat, white hat, gray hat, what have you, it does raise a number of questions now, at least to somebody like me who's not totally up on the law, about well, was this a planned response to, save some face because SOPA was taken down? But more importantly, if they can do this, can they take down something like Dropbox, which, is something that a lot of people, myself included, use to share. I use it we do a lot of video at Techno Buffalo. I use Dropbox all the time to send my raw video footage to our editor so he can color correct and do post and everything. So that's stuff that we own the copyright to. But you can also use it to share whatever you want. So I'm sure people are using it to share copyrighted material that they don't own. So, with this language about the primary purpose and that kind of thing, and, Megaupload was taken down. SOPA's not a loss. There's nothing to do with SOPA. So what are the laws now
Right.
and what could happen next?
Right. The site is down. It's still down. It was shuttered by the federal government. And I think there were either 4 or 5 arrests of executives in New Zealand. So the fact that they were across U.S. borders didn't seem to be a problem.
Is Kim.com, is that
That's the guy's name.
Could you come up with that? Anyway, sorry.
That may be an indictable offense all by itself.
Right, exactly. Better that than Kim iTunes, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So, Evan, do you think that this is either a reaction to the backlash that the White House was getting, having issued its statement against the overreaching intellectual property bills? Do you think that this is a strategic political event? And do you think it's proof that that we don't really need, that we have all the resources we need to go after, as the government has described Megaupload, massive criminal operations in which the main websites have acted as a conduit to other sites where pirated content was easily available?
That's been going on for a long time, so it's pretty hard to imagine that the White House would have orchestrated something, in the term of a week or so to make all of this coincide. Was President Obama meeting with his advisors saying, okay, on Sunday or whenever that was, Saturday, last weekend, I'm going to indicate that I'm not for SOPA, and then, how long do we need? 4 days to get maximum effect for the Megaupload story? Okay, we'll do it that way. I'm skeptical that it came out that way, but it is, along those same lines.
You're so level-headed, Evan.
Well, I don't think we should give that much credence to the efficiency of government to think that they could pull something off so well orchestrated. Let's be careful whose praises we're singing here.
Right. Fair enough.
But it is quite fortuitous, I think, and I'm sure that there was some machinations going on to get the maximum effect of all of this stuff. It really is coincidental, isn't it, that just last week and the week before, I guess since the holidays, we were talking about Megaupload and how it was going on the offensive against the record labels for what it was saying the record labels were being obnoxious for taking down its videos, which even affected the Twit networks some. So isn't it a coincidence that all this stuff is happening in the sequence that it is and all in such proximity to one another, even though the indictment says that these folks with Megaupload have been doing this for 5 years? So there is a certain real value that I'm sure that the Obama administration will try to extract from this, whether it was intentional or not. I'm sure it was massaged in a way to get that. Going to your point, or your question, Denise, of does this demonstrate that there is that the laws that we have in place now truly can be effective? I think it really does, because what I've heard some commentators say is that the Megaupload story is a prime example of what SOPA is intended to combat. Foreign sites that are, their purpose is clearly to engage in piracy. They're, I hear what you're saying, Noah, about how Dropbox could come under this same kind of scrutiny. But to be honest, when I think of Dropbox, I don't think of it in the same way as I do Megaupload. I think of it as being much more benign. And Dropbox doesn't have will.i.am, although will.i.am has distanced himself from endorsing Dropbox. But you can imagine some pretty pretty sick auto tune that he could do with that. But that's another story. You know, the point is, people were saying that Megaupload would be the perfect target for SOPA, but that seems to miss the point or present the real question. And it's like, well, why do we need SOPA if we're already able to talk about Megaupload under traditional theories of, you know, basic international law and the cooperation among foreign governments and the copyright laws that we have and the conspiracy, the RICO, all that stuff. So you know, I would want to study it a little bit more, but my first impression is to think, yeah, why would we need any more effective remedies if what we got is putting these guys in that are in New Zealand in jail?
And to that point, and I don't mean to go, you know, deep end, you know, international conglomerate conspiracy theorist here, but, you know, there was something I read late last night about, I don't know if it was Universal Music Group or one of the media industry companies having sort of a backdoor direct line to YouTube and being able to get content pulled, you know, without having to go through the channels. I don't know how true that is or isn't, but it made me think when you're talking about, do we even need more tools? You know, do we need SOPA in place? I mean, in some ways, the most effective tool is having a buddy at YouTube, you know, who can, you can just call up and get videos yanked in the same way that you could call up and ask them to promote your video to get more mileage out of it. And so it sort of makes me wonder, you know, as much about the law as about, you know, these, you know, that whole thing that certain people like to say about, you know, well, the U.S. government, you know, doesn't rule us, the businesses rule the U.S. government, or I'm sure there's a better way to say that. But really, do we need SOPA, or do we just need, you know, these mega internet companies who control the distribution of content, like Google, like Apple, like whoever, you know, to have a vested interest in playing nice with, you know, the government agencies and the content distributors and so on.
Yeah, I mean, why do they need legislation when you're right? Noah, YouTube has confirmed that it deals with big content providers like Universal Music, where they can take things down. You know, YouTube complained that with respect to the Megaupload video, UMG had overstepped the parameters of their agreement along those lines. But, you know, we know that those agreements are there. We know that they've been in place, for example, on sites like eBay for years and years, where people, you know, big brands see their counterfeit items there, or software manufacturers see software that's counterfeit or what have you, and they can just pull the auctions down.
And I don't mean to get off topic. I'm not a lawyer or a legal expert, so if my point of view is, you know, more informed by, I guess, being a consumer and being a content producer in some ways. But there was a comment in the IRC stream earlier. I forget now who made the comment, but it made me think about, you know, well, if people really want to affect change, you know, the end user needs to, and the end user en masse, not just, you know, the sort of fringe. I don't mean that in a derogatory term, but, you know, the masses in big numbers need to say, okay, well, we're not going to buy music from this outlet anymore because we don't like the way that they're in cahoots with, you know, Lamar Smith or whoever. Or we're going to stop watching YouTube videos because, you know, we found out about these backdoor deals they do, and sometimes it unfairly hurts the little guy who, you know, somebody can have their, I was talking to a blogger at CES who had their YouTube channel yanked, and they're a partner, so they rely on this for some of their operating budget. They had it yanked 9 hours before they were hopping on a plane from Germany to Las Vegas to go cover the show, and there was no, it was a black door, or a black box rather. There was no explanation of what happened. Turned out that some copyright complaints were filed by some company's automatic, you know, bot system for identifying copyright infringements, and there were no actual copyright infringements, and once a human being got involved, everything was fine. But there are things like this that affect the little guy, and I think, you know, there's a lot of that feeling right now in, you know, the Occupy protests or the Occupy movement, I should say, and the anonymous protests, and with this stuff, where the little guy's feeling like, you know, the individual's feeling like, you know, big government and big corporations, and they're controlling stuff, and this isn't fair, and the internet's going to break, and what are we going to do? But I don't know. Maybe I'm cynical, but more and more to me, it seems like, the voice of the consumer en masse has to step up and stop putting money behind things, to really make a change. But I just went way off on a tangent. So
I think it's right on with what happened on Wednesday. People spoke, people called, they made their opinion known, and you're right. That's extraordinarily powerful when that happens.
Julie Samuels at EFF, I think, characterized it well when she said it was the internet at its best. And, I would agree with that, at least in form. I've already said that I disagree with a lot of the substance, but in form, that was wonderful to see what happened on Wednesday. Everybody speaking up like that.
Right. A couple of final observations on this that I'll let you guys chime in on if you have anything to say. First is that I think, the Megaupload thing is good proof that RapidShare, Dropbox, all of the lockering sites are sort of the next P2P bogeyman for the content industries. That, they're in their sites, and to the extent that they've got the Betamax case to fall back on, substantial non-infringing uses, good luck to them, because I think they are definitely in the targets. And also I think that the anonymous reaction, both the anonymous reaction to pulling down, the federal government pulling down Megaupload, including taking down the FBI site, the DOJ site. Who else did they pull down? RIAA and MPAA, of course, and others. Coupled with the fact that someone in IRC, I haven't confirmed this, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised by it, has said, universalmusic.com got taken down too, has said that that Megaupload already has an alternate site up and available and is still functioning, just not at its old address. I don't know if that's the case or not, but both those things, I think, provide fuel to the fire on the opposite side, that, hey, we really don't have any legal recourse from the laws that are on the books, because there is such an enormous ability to run those laws. Evan, do you think I'm on track there?
Yeah, I do. And I don't really have much to add to that, because I think that characterization's right on.
All right. So let's just close out this discussion on SOPA, PIPA, and Open. We have been leaving two of our panelists on the sidelines. I understand Edson McClellan has joined us, and Maria Stearns are there warming up to talk about issues related to Noah's case and social media and employment in general. But let's just close out with any final thoughts, Noah, you may have about what's gone on this week on the legislative and protest front.
I think there's something really great and exciting, and also very, sort of wild in both positive and negative forms, about the ability for a group like Anonymous, and I want to be careful because I'm not sanctioning or I'm not sanctioning anything anybody in particular has done, but just saying, like, the ability group of what seems like a lot of younger people to mobilize globally so quickly is to me, that makes the whole Occupy movement, it makes it make more sense to me around just this idea that, things are changing. And that may sound, like obvious, but, and I'm not saying that massive denial of service attacks are the way to go at all. But just, it's really interesting, that this whole thing about, well, there's always an end around, and Megaupload can just, move to a new domain and everything. And at the same time, there's always, there are these new ways to protest, and this battlefield of the internet, if you will. I truly hope that, as Evan alluded to before, the smart people can come together and rationally talk. But it's going to be a very, very interesting time going forward. I think that goes without saying.
All right. Evan, any final thoughts?
I guess it was just annoying on Wednesday to try to read stuff on Boing Boing and it not be there. So,
yeah, before the show, I was looking around. Maybe if anyone in IRC knows of anything like this, let us know. But I was looking around to see if there were any sort of catastrophic things that happened to people as the result of any of the sites participating in the protests.
Other than not being able to research who the original members of Foghat were. I didn't come up with that.
That's a good one.
Friend of mine here in Chicago tweeted that.
You could have done visual research.
Yeah,
That's right.
Personally, I was happy. I was happy for everyone who participated in the protests. But I also, at the same time, was happy that Amazon opted out of participating, because there is something that I needed desperately delivered to my house on Thursday, and I was glad to be able to have ordered it for overnight delivery on Wednesday. So,
what do they call those first world complaints?
Yes.
Something like that.
Right. I mean, and there you go. It's all going to come down to the consumer and his or her, willingness to or not.
Right. This was more of a healthcare related thing than I need,
Oh yeah, no, I don't mean
that next book.
I don't mean to. Right. Oh, totally, and I didn't mean to point the finger at
No,
you.
that's all I was wondering, is that if there were any kind of risks or personal harm that came to anybody as a result of the blackouts. I haven't heard of any. So, okay, before we shift gears into the labor and employment and social media portion of this episode of This Week in Law, I'd like to thank our sponsor for the episode, which is Netflix. I'm sure you all know by now that Netflix streams thousands of TV episodes and movies directly to you instantly. They have an amazing catalog of stuff. Because you can get them all instantly, this saves you time, money, and hassle. There are many, many ways to instantly access all of the great stuff on Netflix. You can watch on your PC or Mac or iPad. You can watch on your iPhone and some Android phones too. If you have an Xbox 360, a PS3, a Nintendo Wii, all those gaming consoles can bring Netflix streaming right into your home. And if you're not a gamer, you can watch on your TV with an Apple TV box or a Roku box, both of which have Netflix built right in. You can watch anything in its instant streaming catalog, which is so much good stuff. I myself have started to get hooked on Downton Abbey, which is comically described on Netflix as sort of cerebral and low-key. I think that kind of sums it up. But very interesting, sort of a modern-day reinterpretation of Upstairs, Downstairs, if anybody remembers that old PBS show. And I also have fun on Netflix because Maggie Smith is in Downton Abbey. It's fun they let you search by actor or actress. And so you can get her whole body of work, which includes everything from Downton Abbey to, what was the funny thing she was just in recently? Romeo and Juliet. So you can get a real feel for the entire body of work of one of these great actors or actresses. And you can do that by starting a movie in one room of your house, deciding to pause it, and then moving somewhere else, or even leaving, and you're sitting at your kid's baseball game or whatever. Of course you're going to participate and cheer on your child, but you could also sneak a peek at Maggie Smith and Downton Abbey, and you can pick right up where you left off. So whichever way you choose to access Netflix, you can watch as many movies and TV shows as you want, anytime you want, and you can cancel anytime. So if you haven't yet signed up, or you know people who haven't, you can try it, or they can, for 30 days absolutely free by going to netflix.com/twit. Be sure and use that URL when you or your friends sign up. We thank Netflix for their support of This Week in Law and the TWiT Network, and we hope you enjoy watching instantly on Netflix. All right, Maria and Edson, thank you so much for waiting in the wings. Let's get to stuff more in your wheelhouse. How was court, Edson?
It was good. Thanks for waiting for me. Oh yeah, I was gonna tell you I got caught up in hair and makeup, but actually I was in court, so that's why I'm late. So sorry for coming here late. Hi, Evan. Good to be on.
Hey, how's it going, Edson? Good to talk to you again.
Yes, you do look marvelous. So whatever efforts you have gone to, It's great to have you both. So let's start with Noah's situation. A few weeks ago, we started talking about Phone Dog and the litigation that is going on between Noah and Phone Dog. It initially started, Noah, when you separated employment with them. It's been about a year now?
Yeah, a little over a year. October 2010.
Right, and I'm going to be careful using that employment word. I'm going to put air quotes around it or just not use it at all, because one of the key issues in your case is whether you were an employee or just an independent contractor, and that may make some significant difference in how these issues all shake out. But the short story is you were tweeting on their behalf. You had a Twitter account called Phone Dog Noah and had built up a considerable Twitter following, some 18,000 or so followers. Is that right?
Yeah, their legal documents cited at 17,000 when I left.
Right. And you're doing what a lot of people do. You're writing about stuff that's on your own mind, but you're also writing, through the lens of your status working with Phone Dog. And
right.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, absolutely. I tweet a lot. Perhaps too much, but it's always been, since I started using it, it's always been sort of a combination of work-related in the sense that, I'm a tech blogger, tech journalist, and when I was with them, it was specifically covering the wireless industry. There's a lot of, then I also use it as a water cooler to, chat with my colleagues and my peers in the industry. I use it as a place to talk to, random folks online, et cetera, et cetera. So it was definitely a mix of what you'd call work-related and non-work-related.
Right. One of those gray areas. So you did decide to stop working with them. And at that time, you guys had some discussions about what would happen to the Twitter account. Tell us about that. What did you guys decide?
I decided it was time to... we decided when I decided it was time to move on, and we sort of figured out what loose ends needed to be tied up. They said to me, the Twitter account is yours. Decided that I would change the handle so that I wouldn't be using their brand name anymore. We actually, on my last official day working with them, I changed the handle of the account to @NoahKravitz. And I don't remember if I did this or I just helped them coordinate and one of the other employees did it, or one of the other workers, I should say, did it. But we also, the account Phone Dog Noah was then immediately re-registered. And so that account exists, and it's a protected account. So far as I know, don't quote me on this, but so far as I know, it was and still is under Phone Dog LLC's control. So, efforts were made to make sure that that brand name, and if you want to look at the whole Phone Dog Noah thing as a brand name, that was, protected so nobody would squat on it or misuse it, which I think was in both their and my interests. But then my account, the handle was changed. And then actually, my last day with them was on a Friday. I prepared a written and a video post that they published the following Monday. Farewell to, the readers, et cetera, both of which mentioned if you want to keep me wherever I go next, wherever I do, you can call me, @NoahKravitz. So, yes, agreements were made, arrangements were made, actions were taken. Everything seemed to be copacetic until it wasn't.
Right, exactly. That's sort of the problem, huh? So you went on tweeting away @NoahKravitz and wound up in a dispute with Phone Dog over monies that were due to you, you've alleged. And they fired back with a suit against you, or is it a counterclaim, or was it a brand new lawsuit?
Technically, it was a brand new lawsuit.
Brand new lawsuit over the Twitter account, where they have taken umbrage at you continuing to tweet to the account where you developed the followers. And they've come after you for damages related to each and every one of the followers of those accounts, of that account, as of the day that you separated from them, which they're valuing at $2.50 per follower, which per month, yes. So the internet has had lots of fun with trying to come up with, the value of a Twitter follower, and one Twitter follower may be worth more than another for various reasons. Interesting math.
May God bless the United States of the internet. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly. So let's kick this over to Edson and Maria. As far as I know, you guys, this is the first time I've ever seen someone try and come after a former employee for the value of a Twitter account that the person maintained. What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are that, as primarily I'm a defense attorney, so I represent employers, and as I was reading the complaint, and I read the motion to dismiss and the order on that, and the thing that I kept coming back to was that here is a worker who, and let's just assume for the sake of argument that he's an employee, because if he's an independent contractor, I think it's a different analysis. So here's a worker whose job is to.
Well, let's if I might interrupt, and let's go back, because in their court filings they classify me as an independent contractor.
Okay, but let's hear your analysis. Let's not make this specific to Noah. Let's hear what you have to say about a person who's.
It's still all in motion, so I get a little cantankerous, nervous. So I apologize.
Understood. If he's an employee, Maria, go from there.
I'm just going to let Edson chime in.
Okay. Oh no, I would just want to say a general comment that I think it's very brave of Noah to do a show like this in the midst of a lawsuit. And his lawyer must have a lot of faith in him that he's going to, understands all the issues. So I think I commend that. And I also want to say that
he put me up to it. So,
and I also want to say that if you're a friend of the show, you're a friend of me. So I'm going to say all things that are good about your case. No, just kidding. But I do think that actually the employee independent contractor issue is an important issue, and if your case is a little stronger if you're an independent contractor, because as an independent contractor, you generally assume that you have more control over intellectual property than you would have if you were an employee. And so I bet that's an issue that, in your case, the party's going to spend a good bit of time debating.
Right, because the presumption is that if a worker is an employee, that the property or anything that they develop as a result of the working relationship is the property of the business, and that changes somewhat when it's an independent contractor relationship. Not to say that it means that the developments are not the property of the business, but it becomes more a matter of contract and what was the agreement. And so the thing that I'm particularly interested in is if it's not sort of these 17,000 or so followers, Phone Dog is claiming that was a following that was developed as a result of Noah's work for them, and they're paying for that work, and then that's their property, and then they should have that. I think the argument on the other side is that, well, look, these aren't, this is nothing confidential about it. It's not a trade secret. You can know who's the Twitter follower. It's not a piece of property. And so it presents some really interesting issues. I'm wondering, Noah, when you were with Phone Dog, were you doing kind of similar, because you sound like you're a professional blogger, journalist, etc. Are you doing similar type sites but for different businesses, or Phone Dog full time?
I was doing different side projects during the different time. I was with them for you'd think I'd know since I've talked about this so much recently, for roughly 5 years, I guess, and 4 going on 5 years. And I had some side things going on. They were, at the beginning, there were some other tech-related things. As things progressed, my work covering the tech industry was primarily for them. And then I was doing some other things that were, unrelated in the sense that I wasn't writing about wireless phones for other people, but I was doing some work with an educational company online. I had a few startup ideas. I was trying to bootstrap, that kind of thing. So, my Twitter stream in particular covered, literally just everything under the sun. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I'm curious because I think it's interesting as background that this whole thing got started as a result of you filed the initial lawsuit against Phone Dog seeking money based on some agreement. And it appears that they're now lashing out perhaps with the only ammo they have, and saying, okay, well then this is what we believe. And if you want to play that game, we'll play this game.
Yeah. I just to add to that I think a good fact for Noah is that Phone Dog sat on this for a while. If you are the owner of a trade secret and you're watching someone else use your trade secret and you do nothing about it for months or however long, and then all of a sudden you say, we don't want them using our trade secret. This is terrible. We're suffering millions of dollars in damages. We need an injunction. I would think a judge or a jury would reasonably ask, well, then why did you wait months doing nothing about it? So I think no, am I on the right track? Is that something you think too?
Yeah, that works for me, Edson. There are particulars that obviously I shouldn't and I'm not going to talk about here, but I think it's fair to say that until the gentleman rolled up to my house, on a Sunday evening in the summer to serve me with the papers, I was not, the whole idea of them coming after me based on the Twitter account, was not in my mind. It was a complete shock to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, what are I rarely get an opportunity to talk to the other side, and the allegation and the complaint that talks about, they almost feel like it was a conspiracy, and you got all these followers, and then you went and you worked for you went to a competitor, and you're tweeting all of the Phone Dog people and telling them about these other products. What's your response to that?
My response to that is to to tell the truth. And I laugh because at this point, 14 months into this litigation and all this reading other people write about the story and everything, it's sort of like, well, what is the truth? And, who's going to believe the truth or make the judge believe the truth or whatever. But I maintain the same thing that I maintained from day one, which was I left working with them because it was just time for me to leave for a number of reasons. I did not at that time know what I was going to do next. I wanted to take a little bit of time to sort of step back and try to figure it out. I had a few ideas to do something on my own that I worked on for a little while and just weren't, going to pan out financially. And I also talked to a whole bunch of people I knew from the industry, as in any industry. And the opportunity came up to start working with Techno Buffalo, with this website and YouTube channel, that I had known, and we'd actually done a couple projects together when I was at Phone Dog. Phone Dog and Techno Buffalo did a project together, or maybe more than one. And, in sort of being a free agent and getting to talk to all these people, a rapport quickly developed with these guys, and they asked me if I was interested in working with them, and we talked about it, and it was like, yeah, let's go for it. So there was no, I don't aspire to be a conspiracist. I aspire to be able to see that many moves ahead in my life, But at the time, no, it was exactly as, what I told them on my last day, and they said, well, what are your plans now? And I said, I honestly don't know. And I didn't. And, so this is what happened, and this was all discussed. And seemingly, I thought everything was all tidied up when I left, and that I was leaving on, the most, friendly terms possible given the situation. And I really believed, I'm not naive to think that, people break up and everybody's, smelling roses. I understand what happens when relationships end. But it seemed at the time that we were, it was too bad that this relationship was ending, but it was ending in a civil manner, and we had discussed things and things were worked out. And, I sent back the lighting kit and blah, blah, blah. And then, what was the phrase that was used? Then they took umbrage with some things. And so here we are. But no, there was no master conspiracy plan. I understand that 17,000 followers at the time and, whatever it is now in my little corner of the web is a sizable amount. But it's not like we're talking about, I'm not Lady Gaga. I don't have 11 million little monsters, who are buying stuff based on my every word, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not saying that to disparage anybody's legal claims or anything else. I'm just saying that, no, there was no grand master plan. Yeah.
If I could jump in, I think that...
Please.
I think the reason that Noah's case is gathering attention in the media is that even though there's only 17,000 followers, that's a good number of followers for a blogger doing the kind of work that Noah does. But
read my stream and you'll be even more amazed that I have that many followers.
But I think that one mistake that Phone Dog made apparently is not having an explicit agreement with Noah about whose followers they would be and what happens if he leaves, because when you're dealing with property rights, it's good to know what happens when a relationship ends. And so that's something that Phone Dog didn't do. And so because there's no explicit agreement apparently, what the court may do, and what courts sometimes do in these circumstances, say, well, what happens in the industry? If someone who does what Noah does blogging for a company like this, leaves, what is the norm in the industry? And so, Noah's case is kind of helping shape what's the norm in the industry. And so I would expect that Noah's going to get increased amount of phone calls and media attention in this case, because it is, based on the way I look around, one of the first cases really to take up this issue of, essentially who owns these kind of Twitter followers when someone in Noah's shoes leaves a company and moves on.
That's a question I want to fire at you guys, if I may. What do you think of the whole crux of this claim that Twitter followers are some kind of trade secret or akin to confidential phone lists or customer lists that's being asserted here?
I view it as less of a trade secret. I think it's really hard to argue that something that is publicly accessible is a trade secret. I view it more as, I think the better argument is that almost like an invention. That's really not a great analogy, but when an employee, there is well-established law that when an employee builds something as a result of the employment relationship that they've been compensated for, that whatever is the product of their labor is the property of the business, unless there is a agreement to the contrary. I view it more as that, because I'm seeing more and more employers having this social media is becoming a critical aspect of marketing for employers, and so they're bringing in employees whose job is to twit, to blog, to do all.
Let me jump in and correct you. It's tweet.
Tweet. See, I don't get twit. I am a twit because I said that. So I'm getting these calls about, what are we supposed to do and how should we handle it? And some of them use their own personal accounts, but part of their job is to make sure that they, go out there and tweet, etc. And, the rules that we had in place with respect to our, our non-online world are that whatever is developed as a result of that employment is the property of the employer. Now we're crossing into a line where we're entering into some of the employee's personal space. And I think what Edson said about we need to have dialogue, you have to have sort of let's get it out on the table. Whose property is this going to be is the key.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Noah.
Oh, I was just going to say I wholeheartedly agree, and if any good can come out of my little media tour I'm doing here, I mean, and all of the the stuff that just all the resources that have been spent in the legal system and everything out of this, if any good can come out of it, it's just I think the very simple message that figure it out and come to an agreement before you get going, or in the case of online media and social media and things that are changing so quickly, when you start adopting, nobody wants to get left out because they spent a year figuring out their policy, and then the next thing Friendster's dead, and so you couldn't use it anyway. But, try to be flexible, try to figure out things that work, and then, come to agreements, and then obviously honor your agreements and keep your legal documents in case the other side doesn't honor it and you have to litigate. But it's all about, it's no different. I understand these gray areas, but in a lot of ways, to me anyway, being in the middle of it, it's no different than any other, freelance or non-freelance for that matter situation that I've been in, where it's you come to an agreement. And if you have to negotiate around the agreement, you negotiate around, the Twitter account, mine, not yours, or you need a separate Twitter account for your personal use, and this is the one you use with the company brand name in it, and, or whatever the terms are,
Right. We gave out as our tip of the week last week on This Week in Law that I think it's just a good idea that people not put their company's name in their Twitter account, or for companies that have people tweeting on their behalf that they not blend.
Denise, I'm with you.
Yeah. Because it muddies the water so badly. And I think your case, Noah, is a great example of how you can have an agreement. When you separated, there was an understanding, or you thought there was, as to what would happen with the account. And lo and behold, because you were phone dog Noah when you were there, it gives them ammunition to come in and say, wait a second here, we're going to come after you for this. Edson and Maria, do you think, do you like that general rule of thumb, just separation of church and Twitter, as it were?
I think it is good to have separation of church and Twitter. When you ask kind of broadly about my thoughts about whether this kind of information is trade secret information, so whenever I look at some kind of a new area of media or new area where there's be law adapted and there's not a lot out there, I first try to filter it through the traditional existing framework that we look at for the law that's been around for a while, or facts been around for a while. So in this case, I would look first at, did the company keep this information trade secret? Because if we were dealing with a normal customer list, that's what I would ask. Did this company keep the information secret, and what steps did they take? And I don't know a lot about the case, but what it looks like from the paperwork I read is that Noah didn't have an explicit agreement saying this was their information, or even after he left, the company apparently didn't take a lot of steps to keep this kind of information secret or prevent him from doing whatever they didn't want him to do for months. So if I look at it through a traditional framework, then in these kinds of facts, I would think that it'll be hard for a company in Phone Dog's shoes to argue the information trade secret. It's all about being secret.
And what about the whole notion, this is something I love to come back to over and over again, that employees and their work lives, their personal lives and their work lives are getting more and more conflated, that there's less of an ability to draw a black and white line between the two things. Here's, Noah was operating what was a personal Twitter account in so many ways, where he's telling people where he's going and what he's up to and things that don't have really anything too much to do with his work, or tangentially do, or in some cases directly do. But it's all a mishmash of those things. How does all of that impact your thinking about this case, Edson and Maria?
Well, I mean, for me, that it depends what the function of that Twitter account was for. If someone's getting paid by a company to develop followers to promote the company's product, I would think that the company might say that these are our followers. But if the person who's blogging is writing about also what they're making for dinner and more personal things, I would think the company would have less of an interest. And so I think one of the important factor then is what kind of material is being put on this, and if the company is paying for it, and it relates to the company, I think that again it improves the argument for the company that this is more company related and less personal related.
But I agree with you, Denise, that the blending certainly complicates things, and that your tip of the week from last week about leave the company name out of it. If you have in your personal blog, leave the company name out of it is definitely a good suggestion. And by the same token, if you're prepared to put the company name in, then you should be having a conversation with the company about what is going to happen to that intellectual property that you're building as a result of your efforts. And so in the phone dog case, they did have a conversation, but they didn't have a conversation until the end of the relationship. And that was the mistake. It needed to happen early on, just as Noah says, like in any freelance type situation, it's no different. And what I see with sort of in the internet online world is that things move very quickly, and the employer's not slowing down enough to apply the same rules that they do in other contexts.
Beatmaster in IRC is asking whether Rupert Murdoch's tweets are personal or belong to the business enterprise. Well, he's tweeting under Rupert Murdoch, so he took our advice. It does not have the company name in there. Go with that.
And Noah, what's your current handle?
My name, Noah Kravitz.
Okay, so it doesn't have Techno Buffalo in it?
No, it has just my name. Yeah. And to a point that that you both made, Maria and Edson, or I think all three of you made. I would the gray area, the meshing, the melding of what's a business-related tweet versus a personal tweet, and let's look at the actual content on the account and see how much of it is business-related or not, et cetera, et cetera. I would hate for let's call it the employer or the employee. I would hate for either side to lose out on what I think is at the core of the power of social media and what marketers are now calling influencers, which is that you get this mix of both. And I mean it's ironic because at Techno Buffalo I'm not even I don't have the most followers by a long shot. The official account has more than I do, and then John, who started the company, has far more than either the official account or I do. So you should be talking to him, not me, about this stuff. But I think that the infusion of personality and the infusion of it's not just the news headlines and a headline and a link back to something, but it's sort of infused with my own take, or I talk about basketball a lot, or music, or what I'm cooking for dinner, or what have you. Some of the folks who follow me seem to like that, and I think more people love the way that John, I just mentioned, infuses his personality into his account because he has more followers than I do, so that would be a reasonable assumption. But point being that you don't want to lose that personality, because you can have these social media specialists who some of the tech companies who I work with who've been successful having, the official company Twitter account, I know the people in a few cases who are behind those accounts. And they do a great job of infusing a little bit of their personality, or maybe they adopt a corporate personality, if you will, to fit the situation, and a little bit of back and forth dialogue sometimes with, the dry company message. And it would be a shame to lose that, because that's what makes it so fun. And I think that's what people really connect with. So not to say that, from a legal standpoint, I have no idea if, looking at the ratio of business to non-business tweets is something that makes sense. But from my side of the fence, maybe that's naive of me, even still saying, no, if you just work out an agreement ahead of time, everything's cool. Because, I thought we did it, and look where I am. But I don't know. I like to see... I I'd like to see whatever precedents or laws or actions that people take, coming out of this. I'd hate to see that kill the spirit of personality that makes social media so much fun.
Yeah, no, I don't think that I agree with you. I mean, I think that it would be very boring if the personality of the person writing was taken out of it and what they do in their free time, etc. And I certainly don't think it's necessary, but I think you said it perfectly, which is that we just have to have a clear understanding of what is this and what's going to happen to it, and if you go by whose is it, and it can. You can account for every scenario possible, and you can talk about your kids and what you ate for dinner, and if you're going to go exercise, and then talk about the products as well, etc. But we all know that this is so-and-so's property at the end of the day. So
right, exactly.
Edson, before we move on from this, let me fire one question at you. Twitter's problematic in a number of ways for lawyers because of its ability to constrain what people can say. Some people see that as a bug, others see it as a feature. But you can give some minimal context to who you are when you're tweeting in this little description that can come after your name. Mine says lawyer, mom, info, vagabond, for example. Mm-hmm. So do you think that this kind of space is an appropriate place to message these tweets are my own and I'm not representing my employer, and any kind of CYA language there?
That would be, I would want to do it by more than just that, than just the extra language. I think that the more personal it sounds, like yours sounds pretty personal, was something that it would help someone to know his shoes. So I think that bloggers, as much as possible, want to retain control over their thoughts, and just like artists do, and what they create. And so if it's important to you to keep what you create, which it is to most artists and bloggers, then you want to make it clear, whether by contract or even just by infusing it in what you write, that it's personal, that you own it. If it's important enough, you at a higher scale, you involve attorneys in it to hash out, because it doesn't have to be all or one, that this person owns it completely or that person owns it completely. It could be broken up, and I don't know how you necessarily could break up what Noah was working with, like a Twitter account, but sometimes there's ways to divide up intellectual property that can make sense in a certain situation. For example, if you're working on an invention, someone could have licensing rights but not ownership rights. And so I know we're talking about a Twitter account here, so you may have to be creative how that can be broken up. But I think that as someone in Noah's shoes, to retain as much control as possible, you'll want to personalize it to the extent you can.
Okay, thanks for that. Hey, Evan, you've been awfully quiet in this discussion. Anything you want to say about Noah's case before we move on?
I'm just waking up from a little nap over here, so it's been fun. No, this is really, really good stuff. And I mean, the analysis has been very thorough and comprehensive, and I don't really have anything to add to it. So all that I could do is just kind of summarize and see what I see as the biggest points and kind of the takeaway from all this. And that is, what we seem to be talking about here is like something that's not really named yet, but just some kind of amorphous business tort going on here that is presenting a lot of weirdness because of the factual context it arises in. I mean, there's kind of like this implied sense of inurement, of goodwill to the company that Noah certainly has a different perspective on and wouldn't necessarily agree with. But I think what really underlies all of this is the fact that it's very fact intensive, and that is also in the context of the sensibilities we all have about who our friends are and who decides they want to like us or follow us on Twitter or align themselves with us in whatever way. So that's why I think, as far as the question of liability goes, there's this fundamental weirdness as to what kind of claim really is appropriate for this, and how do we really go proving that. And I guess one thing I haven't really heard any discussion about, I don't think, is the question of measuring damages. I mean, what's the strategy behind that? I mean, is this something that requires hiring an expert to give an expert opinion on the value of one Twitter follower? And if it seems like it would be, and if so, what on earth does that analysis look like? And this is only kind of a half of a rhetorical question. If anybody has any ideas, Noah, I'm certainly not asking you to disclose litigation strategy, but it certainly is an interesting question to me as to how you figure this stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, I will. I don't even know what the litigation strategy is at this point. That's why I have lawyers. But I will say that there are online services that claim. Well, I'll back up even a step further. The Techno Buffalo works with a company called NetShelter who sells ads against some of our content, banner ads and other sorts of campaigns. And they recently, in the past year, relaunched their whole marketing campaign to potential advertisers, calling us the Influence Network. And so that's just one of many examples going on of different companies, from somebody like them who sells ads to companies like Clout and Peer Index, to services that claim that they can analyze your Twitter account and spit out a dollar value, are all trying to put metrics on it, right? Because it's like this new, it used to be page views, then it was uniques, and now apparently it's, some magic formula that can quantify that plus social network engagement to give a true reach of how many people you reach and then how many people they reach and so on and so forth. So you've got all that stuff going on. But then you've also got this thing where if you look at these 17,000 followers, how many of them were active? YouTube, I don't know what's happened with it, if it actually happened or not, but I know there's a lot of talk that YouTube was going to reset subscriber counts on your accounts. So like the Techno Buffalo account has however many subscribers. They were going to do a reset and recalculate by yanking out all of the inactive and dead accounts. So if you apply that to Twitter and you look at, well, how many of my 17,000 followers at the time were active? How many of them were spam bots? How many of them only followed me because they were hoping I would follow them back? How many of them actively retweet my comment to their network? What's the size of their network? What's the quality of their network? Mm-hmm. There's so many metrics going on that, in their case, they put this $2.50 per follower per month, thing on it. Not for me to say. There has been commentary about whether or not that number is too high, overinflated or not, let's say. But then, even looking at that, it would stand to reason that would have to be an average value. Because if you're saying $2.50, is the spam bot that just got kicked off of Twitter because Twitter, improved their ability to block accounts that were only spamming people based on keywords like iPad 2. If that, is that account worth a full $2.50? No, it stand to reason maybe it's worth like 1/100 of a penny. So then on the other end, there's got to be somebody balancing out. Like if Gaga follows me and retweets me, she's got to be worth a lot more. So there's so many metrics that, from a detached standpoint, it's fascinating. From my current standpoint, hopefully it helps my cause, but it's certainly calling it a gray area, I think is an understatement.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, Denise, and I think that I agree that valuing the followers is going to be a really difficult job. And so what experts a lot of times they do is they look for comps. What is some product that is in dispute? What is that sold for in the past? And so I think that to the extent it becomes a market for followers, when people leave and there's a price put on moving a block of followers from one company to another company, you will start to see some shape come to how much value should be placed on a Twitter account and certain followers that come with it. And it's going to be fact intensive, but it will start to take shape as the market emerges for when people switch jobs. like, for example, what would Techno Buffalo have paid to obtain this list of followers? And so, as the market emerges, I expect that experts will have more resources and more comps to put a price tag on allegedly misappropriated Twitter accounts.
Yeah, I have no doubt that the social media experts of the world will get themselves involved in this stripe of litigation and have more employment for themselves as a result. Guys, I wanted to talk briefly.
Out there somewhere.
Yeah. I wanted to talk briefly about the fact that, and this was something that just kind of flashed out there, was not big news, but I thought it might be interesting to our panel here today, that apparently there was a confidential employee policy with regard to social media and basically public communications in general that was operating in-house at Apple that got leaked after Apple let an employee go. I think it's interesting it got leaked. I think it's interesting what it says. For example, in the context of what we've just been discussing, it says that employees may run their own websites but are not permitted to discuss Apple in that context. So I just wanted to toss this out. A couple of questions to our labor and employment folks. First, do you think that maybe it's time just for companies to abandon having private, internal only accessible policies because they're bound to leak out there inevitably anyway? What do you think, Edson?
Well, I don't think you'd want to have a policy that you wouldn't want to be having exhibit at trial. That you're going to. One of the reasons you create a policy is you want people to follow it, and if they don't, you want to hold it up and say you didn't follow this policy. So, having policies that you don't want the public to ever find out about is a problem from the beginning. But I do think it's important to have policies in this case, and you could take issue with whether the policy you're talking about, which I just read some snippets of, is a good policy. But I don't think a company should fear implementing good policies because of the worries that they'll get out into the public.
Right. And for Maria, what do you think about the content of this particular one that leaked? Apple apparently takes a very restrictive view of, a separation of church and Twitter, if you will. They don't want employees talking about Apple, period, out there on the wild, wild web. Do you think that that's a good strategy or no?
No, I don't think it's a good strategy. Particularly right now, there's been I think in the last year, there are about 14 or 15 decisions issued by the National Labor Relations Board regarding unfair labor practices. And typically when you hear about the NLRB, you think of it in the union context, that there must be a union at the employer. But there is a law, the National Labor Relations Act, that protects all employees, regardless of whether they're unionized, protects their right to engage in what's called protected concerted activity. They're able to talk amongst themselves and, strike, rally the troops, say that they think that their working conditions are bad or their manager's bad or they should be getting paid more money, etc. So now what employers are dealing with is the situation where you have employees on Facebook or Twitter, etc., speaking badly about the company. And Apple's policy, the portion that I read, which was leaked, specifically restricted any bad talk. And at first you would say to yourself, well, of course an employer should be able to restrict their employees from speaking badly about them. But what the National Labor Relations Board is saying is that, hey, look, the internet, blogging, Facebooking, etc., that's the new way of communicating for employees. So if employees are commiserating together with the purpose of making things better or hoping that there will be change, then you can't prohibit them from speaking negatively. And so it's been very challenging for employers to figure out how they can control what their employees are saying without walking themselves in simultaneously to a lawsuit that they are restricting their employees' right to engage in protected concerted activity. And there's been quite a bit of litigation on that issue.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks so much for highlighting it. I'm going to get to now our tip and resource of the week. Our resource of the week is something that Evan alluded to earlier. Tom Merritt has talked about on Triangulation earlier this week. It's a report from the U.S. Government Accountability Office called Observations on Efforts to Quantify the Economic Effects of Counterfeit and Pirated Goods. It came out in April of 2010, and it basically talks about how difficult it is to say that there is any damage coming from piracy or in copyright infringement and counterfeiting. Let's use those terms instead. It's not denying that there is damage. It's saying that it's difficult to quantify. There is a 41-page report. It's also saying that efforts to quantify it by various industries, including the entertainment industry, are suspect because of the difficulties in quantifying any actual damages that might be occurring. I just think it's an interesting document and a good resource in the context of what we were talking about in the early part of the show. Evan, is there anything you want to say about this before we move on to our tip?
It's amazing that the government can take 41 pages to simply say, we have no clue how to answer this question. Leave it to the government for that.
Exactly.
Unless the lawyers probably wrote it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure.
I think the GAO is probably full of them. Okay, and our tip of the week flows from a story over on Cash Hill's blog. A work perk turns snitch is her headline. And it's talking about the fact, first of all, she puts it in the context of a case we recently discussed about GPS tracking and how, this is all before the Supreme Court, and yet there was recently a federal judge who said it was okay for the FBI to put one warrantlessly on a car to track a suspect. Cash Hill says, well, if that person had just had a work-issued phone, the whole problem might have been alleviated because you can easily track your employees' movements through the devices that you are issuing to them. So here's my question, and hopefully you guys have a tip. How should employees deal with these work-issued devices, be they a phone or an iPad, some other tablet, a laptop? Is there an employment spin or an employer spin to how these things should be treated, and what should be the parameter for an employee's privacy versus how an employer can follow them around? What do you think, Edson?
But privacy is determined to a great extent by a person's expectations, and so if you're an employer, you want to set the employee's expectations. And so if there's a phone, you give an employee a phone and it tracks where they are, you want to make sure they expect that and they're not surprised by it later. And so as an employee, you want to say, look, we're going to give you a phone, but one of the consequences of that is we're going to know where you are. And then if the employee later can't really complain that the employer was tracking where they were because they were told that up front, so they didn't have much of an expectation of privacy. So if you're an employee and you have a problem with a company phone that can track your every move and the company's told you that's going to happen, then maybe you should decline the company phone and use your own personal phone if the company will let you do that. And then on the other side, so that means as an employee, you just want to make sure that if you're taking a company phone and there's some ambiguity about what they're going to use that phone for, you might want to address that with the employer and say, what are you going to use this phone to track me? I think it's fine to ask that explicitly. But on the employer side, if you're going to track an employee, you should tell them and you confirm it in writing that you're going to use this phone to track where they go.
And you may or may not track them, but the best practice for an employer is to have a policy with respect to all devices, whether it be a cell phone, iPad, voicemail, email, that says, hey, you have no expectation of privacy in any of these resources, and that we do reserve the right to monitor, and leave it at that. And most of the time an employer never does monitor until there's a piece of litigation, and then we go back and we look at everything to see what they were doing.
Right. Are you guys seeing at all employees start to object to this kind of thing and come back and say, hey, I don't want to be monitored. Take it or leave it. Are people exercising their opinion along those lines, or is job security such a concern that they just stay quiet and say, okay?
I mean, I haven't seen many circumstances where employees, objected to being tracked, because it really doesn't happen much that I'm aware of. I know it does happen some. Most often, though, employees will not use their work cell phones as much because they don't want the employers to get the bills and see all the different personal phone calls. And they also want to use a personal cell phone because they can keep it when they leave. And usually when you have a work phone, you have to return it to the employer when you leave. And so when they leave, they want to be able to keep their phone number. They want to have all their contacts. And so that's usually what pushes employees to want to use not use the employer phone as opposed to the GPS tracking feature.
Right. So our tip for employers is to be very clear if you're going to be tracking. For employees, use your own phone if you're concerned about this. Evan, you want to weigh in on this at all?
Yeah. Again, not to add anything substantive because, everybody's doing such a great job on this analysis here. It would be interesting to see a fact scenario where there is some kind of litigation, whether it be a discrimination case or some other kind of wrongful termination case or whatever, like an employee, unemployment benefits case. Seems like this might be a likely scenario for it to come up, where the employer tries to take discovery even of the employee's private cell phone, cell location records. I mean, that seems like I don't see any obvious obstacles to that information being discoverable in the litigation. To say, for example, if the employee was saying, no, I was at work on that day, and, it was wrong for you to fire me and I ought to be able to get benefits and, this is a wrongful termination, all that stuff. Well, like, oh, no, look here, you were actually somewhere, 3 counties over, at the lake or at the beach or something like that, and your cell phone records, your own cell phone records prove it. That seems to me kind of an interesting place where, a little nuance where that actually conceivably could go.
Hey, Noah, when you were at Phone Dog, were you tweeting from any equipment that Phone Dog had supplied you? It's a relevant question, I think.
No, I know. I'm laughing just because listening to the last 3 or 4 minutes has scared me into never wanting to work for or talk to anybody again.
Right.
No, I don't believe so. This may be used against me in a court of law, so I should think carefully. But
just say, not that I recall.
Right.
Not that I recall. I mean, we got a lot.
The reason I asked the question is because I think it could make a difference in your case.
Right. No, I mean, I provided my own equipment for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part. But in the case of things capable of tweeting, we got a lot of, my job was to cover the phone industry. So we got a lot of review loaner phones from companies. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if LG loans me a phone for 2 weeks to review it on Phone Dog, are the tweets I send from that phone, are they the property of Phone Dog, the property of LG? Are they held in escrow until I return the phone? I don't know. But no, I mean, for the most part, my my equipment was computers and certainly my cell phone purchased by me, so far as I recall.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, counsel, although your counsel's not there. All right.
I'm sorry, you can't ever get a straight answer out of me. I apologize.
Yeah, no. That's that was a good way to answer that question, because I do feel like that's the kind of thing that you might see asked in discovery in your case. So a heads up on that.
Right.
All right. Well, this has been a really, really fun show. Lots of great stuff happened this week, and I appreciate you guys helping us go through it. Noah, good luck with everything. We appreciate all your thoughts and insights about your case. It's
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Evan, great to have you back on the show.
Great to be here. This has really been a fun conversation. Really have enjoyed talking with you, Noah, and Maria and Edson. Great to talk with you. Edson, good to talk with you again. And I'm wondering if you could indulge me, if I can just take the camera here. I don't know how well you can see this, but Chicago is really socked in with snow.
Oh, wow.
Is that apparent from, it actually looks like it's snowing. In real life, it looks like it's snowing more than what the camera is showing up, I believe. So, I just got the email since we've been on the show that my office is closing early. And so it looks like you're going to be doing some sledding this weekend.
Yay.
Nice.
It's gorgeous here in Southern California. So if you need a break from the cold, I'll buy a coffee.
Oh, sounds good. Sounds good. I'll be right there.
All right. Hey, Edson and Maria, it's been a real pleasure having you on. Thanks so much for making everything work logistically and joining us on the show.
Oh, thanks for having us back, Denise.
Thank you.
It's
Bye,
been
Evan.
really great.
Noah,
and
Noah,
hey, say hi to Rich when you see him. Edson and Maria both work with my husband at the same law firm. Our big hitter law firm in town, Rattan and Tucker.
No, I'll be following your case in the paper and wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, good luck on your motion to dismiss hearing next week.
Thank you so much. You guys are down in Irvine, is that what I heard you say?
Yeah.
Costa Mesa.
Orange County, rather. Okay, yeah. So our Techno Buffalo's HQ is down there in Irvine, so you guys should drop by and say hi sometime if you're in the area.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Up to.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you. Folks, you can keep up with us off the show. Noah is obviously at Noah Kravitz now on Twitter. Evan is at Internet Cases. I am at D. Howell. This Week in Law has a Facebook page where we have lots of exchanges about the show. We love to get ideas from you there about what we should cover. Same thing with our Google Plus page and my personal Google Plus page. So follow us all those spots. Yes, add to Noah's Twitter following count just to complicate things in his case.
It won't. Seriously, people have said to me, I was going to follow to show support, but I don't want to add to your legal bill. It won't add to the legal bill. So,
there you go.
You might regret it for other reasons.
At a certain date. That's awesome. So definitely follow him. And also get in touch with me by email. I'm Denise at twit.tv. You can find us on iTunes and at twit.tv on YouTube. Subscribe to us in any way that you'd like. The show comes out in all of those various formats. And we love to have you, of course, either follow along live when we record at 11 o'clock Pacific time on Fridays or track us down after the fact in any number of venues. We love to see you however you join us. And we will see you next week with Larry Downs, and hopefully, I haven't heard back from him, but I'm trying to get Trevor Tim from the Electronic Frontier Foundation to talk more about internet legislation and the other critical news of the day. We are so thrilled that you joined us, and we'll see you then. Take care.